All right, I'm gonna try to make a video. I keep on saying I'm making these videos for myself, but also for future reference if somebody else takes over and they want to know exactly what the hell I was doing, because these things get a little crazy. So yesterday I started doing some changes to the legacy encoder gateway. I have not touched that software until now. This is something that was done by Voltec back in the day when Speed Network was happening and they were transitioning from S3, which is the it's called the Amazon way of storing videos, to IPFS, which is what we have now. Now, the issue with the encoder gateway, and I've said it in different videos, is that it was software that was not maintained. So uh, things break. That's how it happens. And we were using it. It was working okay most of the time. If you guys are on the Discord server of 3Speak, there's a channel there called a gateway monitor, and sometimes maybe 40% of the time it would bug out, and then we would have to use a gateway aid, which is something. I didn't even put that here. So let me put that gateway aid here, which is a backup. But at any rate, what I wanted to do, and which is why I guess I didn't sleep that well and why I'm still on the computer and why things are crazy, is I wanted to change the algorithm of the legacy encoder gateway. Why? Because it's supposed to work. The way it's supposed to work is supposed to distribute the load. The fastest encoder gets more and more jobs, which makes sense in practice. I mean, in theory, but in practice, what ends up happening is that you have 9 people operating encoders, and they're all pretty good, but then one person's getting most of the jobs because of a tiny difference, and then you're basically reintroducing centralization to the system, which is really what we're trying to move away from. So I simplified the logic behind how the jobs are distributed, and so that's what I did. Now and this was foolish of me. I was like, yeah, I can do this real quick and nothing's going to happen. But then, of course, a lot of things broke. So I implemented something called a round robin. I'm going to put it here. So system. So what does that mean? It means that basically it it's gonna if there's 9 encoders online or 4 or 5 encoders online that are pinging the server, which is something I also had to add because we didn't have that. Then it's just going to be like, okay, here we go. This guy is online, doesn't have a job. Here's a job, and we do auto assignments. Now that was going to reduce quite a bit of time from the video encoding process, and the reason why is quite simple. The way it was working before, the process was, let's see if I can write it over here. Let's write it over here. Is One of the legacy websites would upload a video, and I'm calling them legacy, but obviously, I don't know if that's correct. That's a mobile 3Speak app, SNC, or if you are using Studio 3Speak.tv. I think in Leo also at some point in time. I don't think they're using it anymore. But anyways, they would upload a video, then that would push a job to the gateway encoder, which is the legacy stuff. Then that would create an entry, an unassigned entry, and in the database. And then what would have to happen after that is that the encoders would fight for one of the jobs. Basically that, so they would be requesting jobs, sending API calls until the encoder said, okay, I'll give it to you, and that decision was made because of performance. But that created crazy race conditions. So what would happen is maybe 2 encoders would send the request almost at the same time, and they would both get a positive reply from the legacy encoder. So they would both say, okay, you got the job, and they would both work the same job, and then one of them would end up finishing first for whatever reason, and all that resource was wasted. So you would have double work for no result, which would end up actually with a lot of junk on the supernode. You're storing a lot of duplicated videos that are just going to live there forever, which is terrible. So that was one of the issues with this system, the way that it was doing it. So the round robin simplifies it a lot more. Like I was saying, it's going to auto assign the job as soon as it gets it. So once a job is pushed by any of the legacy apps, right? It's just going to say, okay, who's available? You're online. Okay, you got the job. So now that means that the encoders have to be, I did that. And that meant that the encoders have to be updated because now they're not going to be requesting a list of what's available and then try to claim. They're going to request a job that they own. So now these guys are requesting from the gateway, my job is the name of the path, saying my job. And then the gateway is going to respond. It's like, okay, this one is yours. And then, of course, the work will begin. But then that introduced another issue, which was, now they can request my job, and now they can be auto assigned, or they will be auto assigned. But do the encoders know, first of all, how to request my job, how to properly parse that, and does the legacy encoder gateway have that path? And of course it didn't. So I had to create a new endpoint on the legacy encoder gateway that has my job. So when you hit that my job path, it's going to reply to you. You hit it, giving it your DID, so your identifier, and it's going to reply to you with an array of jobs that belong to you, or just one job. Obviously, it could be an array, it could just be one job. If you get that array, you have to parse through it and get the job IDs that you need, and then of course you are guaranteed it is yours because the gateway does not assign to two encoders the same job, and you can begin work. But that meant, of course, that I had to open a new path, and that required authentication. So I had to create like a middleware of sorts, so that you can't just be slamming the gateway requesting jobs all the time. So that was one of the challenges that I had to deal with. Now, in the new system, and I was like, okay, I got it. Now it's working. That's great. But the new system was bypassing the encoder gateway, and maybe that was a design flaw of my part. When I started making the simplified upload system, which is what you use when you go into the new 3speak.tv, the simplified upload system does not create the jobs using the legacy encoder gateway. It creates it automatically. So the moment you make an upload on 3speak.tv, it automatically creates a job. So and by automatically creating a job, then it would sit in the database as an unassigned job, and then the encoders would try to take it, would try to claim it. But now you can kind of see what the issue was going to be. It was going to be that since it didn't go through this guy, then it never got assigned, and then these guys now are not pulling for all the list of jobs like they used to. They're pulling my job. Hey, give me my job, not all the list of jobs. So now I introduced another issue, which meant that now I have to create a way to assign jobs from here, from the staging server. So that meant I had to create another path, or another process in the legacy encoder gateway, one that I'm calling the assigner. And I had to open up a new, like I said, a new path, a new process. And once the upload is done and it creates the job entry, then it hits the legacy encoder gateway saying, hey, assign jobs, so that it knows, hey, I have some jobs in the database right now that are not assigned. Nobody's going to work on them unless I assign them. So you can think of it like a healer of sorts, and it would go ahead and assign jobs. So, okay, this one to you, this one to you, this one to you. So that means that these guys have something to do. But that introduced another issue. And the issue was, what happens if this fails? What happens if when the staging server, which has the new upload, simplified uploads as I call them, sends the API call to this guy, but something happens, something breaks or it doesn't respond. It could happen. That's why you have fallbacks. Well, that means that I had to introduce what I'm calling a healer that runs every 15 minutes or 20 minutes. You can set it up in the configuration, that looks for jobs that are on the database that are not assigned. So basically, since the encoders are not fighting for jobs anymore, they're waiting for jobs to be assigned to them to prevent double work and wasteful resources. Now I have to make sure the jobs are not unassigned for a long time. So I created this healer, and I think I currently have it set up for 15 minutes. So if in 15 minutes there's a job somewhere in there that has not been assigned, then it's going to do it, even if the staging server failed on the call. And then after that happens, that means that it can go through the rest of the stuff, which is, get the job, do the job, go to the traffic director, get an information on who they should upload it to, then send it to the hot node, and then the hot node after 2 weeks and sends it to the super node for long-term storage. So that goes the rest. This is something I've talked about in other videos. But then I'm like, okay, I think I got it. And that was by more or less the time I started to feel like drunk because I was way too tired. So I was like, oh, I got to do something about the gateway aid, which is another issue. Now, in my opinion, you should not have any production system without fallbacks. And one of the fallbacks that I built for the legacy encoder gateway is what I call the gateway aid. And I've showed it on different videos. So it's this guy over here. So this guy over here, look, it's been assigned. And this is because and 13 minutes ago, 1 minute ago, so nobody's working on it. And this is because the encoders have not downloaded the new code. So now I'm going to have to force this. But anyways, we'll talk about that in a second. But this gateway aid works as a fallback to this guy. So when this guy fails, when the encoders are trying to get jobs and they cannot communicate with this, or for whatever reason, outage, it's getting slammed, no response or whatever, they can go to the gateway aid, and the gateway aid can give them the information that they need. They can give them a list of the jobs that are available, a list of the jobs that are assigned, and go from there. Now, I didn't want to make too many changes on the gateway aid because that requires even more work. So I was like, okay, how do I make it to where the encoders, the fallback of the gateway aid works? The fallback can continue without me breaking the app. So what I did was, this guy used to return only jobs that were unassigned. Now returns also jobs that are assigned. That's basically the main difference that I did. So that meant that the encoders now have to do the parsing, which means that when an encoder cannot communicate with the legacy encoder gateway, and it communicates with the gateway aid as a fallback, then it will get a list of the jobs that are available, and it will look at the DIDs of the assignments and be like, which one of these is mine? Okay, this one, and it begins work, because as I said, there's a single truth of source. Single source of truth. So now whatever is assigned on the database, that is it. That is your job. You can go ahead and you can do it. And then of course, if this is completely down, it can finish the job using the gateway aid, which means it can report progress, it can report finishing, and et cetera, and then it goes through the rest of the stuff. But this meant, of course, that I needed something else. And after I'm like, okay, this is more or less pretty good design. I'm thinking, I'm pretty happy. But then I had another issue. How do I know what encoders are online? And I discovered another big challenge. The way that it was working before is that we have on our database, we have they're called cluster nodes. These I'm calling encoders, but they're called cluster nodes in the database. And they have a field called last seen, and it gets updated when they finish a job. So once they finish a job, then the encoder gateway, this guy, updates the last seen of the encoders, and that way it knows, like, oh, this guy's working, this guy's functional. But they're not going to finish a job unless they get assigned a job, and they cannot be assigned a job unless they know they're online. So it's a circular issue, and I'm like, oh my god, what did I do? I just freaking stabbed myself in the foot. So now I had to incorporate something else. I'm calling it the heartbeat, which is communication back and forth between the encoders and the gateway to let the gateway know, hey, I am here, and that updates the last seen on the database that we use, and that way the encoder gateway knows who is online and who's available to take jobs. But as I was doing that, I'm like, okay, might as well, since I already down and out for crazy because I did this to myself, I might as well continue making this better, easier for me for later. So now they have a heartbeat. So these guys are it. So now in the gateway monitor, you can see who's online right now. So they're picking the legacy gateway, and if they're picking the legacy gateway, that it updates the last seen, and it knows to assign jobs to the people that are on this list. If you haven't been around for 5 minutes, then it considers you offline, and it's going to go ahead and ignore you. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. That's why I didn't sleep that well. But I'll finish off this video saying, if you are an encoder operator, you need to download the newest code. I just did a push, and yeah, that's it. I'm signing off.